Hey everyone, my name is John. I want to thank you for coming to my channel where we talk about everything that has to do with real estate, from laws to negotiations to sales tactics for agents and all that kind of stuff, and even for sellers and for buyers and for renters who are actually looking on the market, kind of tips and tricks on what you can do while you are looking in the market as well. So anything that has to do with real estate, this is the channel for you. Make sure you subscribe. Click on the button below, and we have videos coming out every single week. So, what is this video about? We are talking about the National Association of Realtors and how they are getting, how they're in a lawsuit essentially with the Department of Justice for antitrust violations, and also class action suits with a couple different people where they are attacking National Association of Realtors, they are attacking the brokerages and MLSs in multiple areas around the country. So I'm going to try to talk about this as fast as I can so you could try to understand kind of like a brief synopsis of what is going on and how does this affect real estate agents, how does this affect buyers, how does this affect sellers, and my opinion about all that kind of stuff, right? So we don't really know what is going to happen at the end. I'll give you my opinion, give you my 2 cents with my years of experience and what I think is going to happen. How did this even begin to start with? How did it start? So essentially back in 2019 from someone by the name of Christopher Moehrl. I can't say his last name, but I'll just say Christopher. Christopher essentially filed a lawsuit back in 2019 against the National Association of Realtors because he believes that buyer-broker commissions were inflated, which in turn have inflated the total commissions paid by home sellers who have incurred on average thousands of dollars in damages. So essentially he thinks that by buyer brokers receiving any sort of commission has inflated the prices and essentially inflated more fees for him that he has to pay at the very end. So he thinks he's entitled to damages, and what has happened because of that case, it got into a class action status. Therefore, anyone who feels similar to how Christopher feels, they could go ahead and jump on this and essentially go after the big brokerages and MLS systems that are out there today. So, which brokerages are affected with these types of class action lawsuits that are going on? Because there's one with him. There's another one going with someone else. I think it's called Seltzer. I think it's called. Burnett versus the National Association of Realtors, which was formerly Sitzer, right, versus NAR. They're making similar claims, which was granted class action status back in April of 2022. That case, however, is limited to home sellers and only in Missouri, right? NAR and the same major real estate companies are listed as defendants along with several Missouri-based MLSs. So that particular class action suit is only focused in Missouri. The other one is actually focused into a lot of different areas, which I could just hit really quickly. It's hitting the Bright MLS, which is in Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and DC. The My Florida Regional MLS, which is in the Tampa, Orlando, Sarasota area. The Midwest MLS, which is Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota. You have the Southwest, which is Texas and Nevada and Arizona. Then you have these other MLSs in the Mountain West area, which is Colorado Springs, Colorado, and Utah. And then the Southeast region, which is targeting Florida, North Carolina, and Virginia, I believe. Wait, no, just North Florida and North Carolina for that one. So essentially, with this particular class action suit, is actually affecting a lot more people than the other one, which is only affecting in Missouri. But most importantly, the Department of Justice is going after the National Association of Realtors because they believe that NAR is doing an antitrust violation where they essentially think that they're the only ones in town, and also something about pocket listings. So, with that said, what is going to happen now? This actually goes through, and the other side wins. NAR loses this whole entire thing. What does that mean for me as a buyer's agent? The answer to that question is kind of gray at the moment right now because, the way how commissions are structured, just in case no one really understands how the real estate brokerage community works, this is how it normally works. When you hire a seller's agent, which is a real estate agent that represents a seller, because there's always 2 people in a transaction. Honestly, I didn't even know about this until I first took my first course ever years ago in regards to a real estate transaction. I had no idea that there was a seller's agent and a buyer's agent, right? So the seller's agent is representing the seller's best interest, and the buyer's agent is representing the buyer's best interest, right? So as a seller's agent, essentially when you are talking to a homeowner that wants to sell, you're talking to that homeowner, you're kind of like telling them, okay, I can sell your home. Here's a range of the price that I think it will sell at compared to the comps that we saw in the area, meaning comparables of what has sold, all right, that are similar to your house. And then you, as a seller, will essentially pick the price. Sometimes you might not agree with the real estate agent on price, and you might think it's higher, which is 99.9% of the times when you're talking to a seller, right? Once you get an exclusive agreement, which essentially means that a homeowner is partnering with a seller's agent, their agent, to try to sell their home exclusively. So if that agent is with a big brokerage, such as Remax, Keller Williams, Compass, or any of these big companies, or smaller ones, such as ours, as Blue Lotus Realty or anything like that, you are now in an agreement with the seller's agent, with the homeowner and yourself to sell it for a certain price. So I say, all right, we're going to sell it at $500,000 or $700,000, whatever we agreed on, right? $700,000, okay, perfect. So on an exclusive agreement, we're going to start your home selling at $700,000, and then there's going to be a part of that agreement where we're talking about the commission, right? So we're talking about commission, and we're trying to figure out, where do you want to be in regards to commission? Commission is really based on whether the seller wants to really pay that or not, right? Typically, it's around 6%, more or less, and then what happens with that commission, half of it gets split to the buyer's agent as an incentive for them to bring buyers over to the seller's house. Make sense? So this is where I believe the confusion is, okay? I think the seller thinking that, hey, why am I paying the buyer's broker? When in reality, what you really are paying is you're paying 6% over to the main broker, the broker that you just hired, right? And you're kind of like saying, hey, man, if another agent comes in and has a buyer, I'm willing to just split that commission with them, right? And a lot of contracts mention that too. And I'm assuming through this entire case, they feel like they do not have any sort of options as a seller, as a homeowner, that they have no options other than going with the agent and paying the 6% or paying the 5 or 4% or whatever the percentage that they agreed on with the agent in order for the home to get sold. So my opinion on this particular is that, you know what, in all true honesty, sellers do have options on what they want to do. A homeowner could sell a home on their own if they want to, if you understand the process, if you know how to negotiate, if you have time to do showings, if you have time to do open houses, if you have time to start calling around to figure out if anyone in the neighborhood or their friends or their family members are willing to live in the neighborhood, you could do that too. I mean, you have the tools, you have everything that a real estate agent has to your disposal, in a sense of, if you're not licensed, okay, sure, you don't have that, but you could get the same tools that a real estate agent normally has. As a matter of fact, there are brokers out there that you could pay, I think it's like $300. They'll put the listing on the MLS for you, right? And then what happens is the funny thing, a lot of people who go this route pay $300 for a broker that puts it on the MLS for you. You will see on the MLS that the seller is willing to pay 3% for the buyer's agent, because again, it's like an incentive to bring a buyer to your listing. If you're not going to give any incentives, the majority of agents wanting to bring buyers to your home are close to none, right? Now, it doesn't mean you can't put your listing on a for sale by owner website. It doesn't mean you can't put your listing on Facebook. It doesn't mean you can't put your listing on social media advertising, either on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. I mean, you name it. You could advertise your home everywhere as if it's your own home, right? Because by law, you cannot sell somebody else's home unless you're a licensed real estate agent. So essentially, as a seller, you have options. That's why I think this whole entire antitrust lawsuit is complete garbage, because I honestly think it's going to go absolutely nowhere. What does this mean now for buyers? If this thing goes through, Well, if that's really the case, then they're saying, because the other side's saying that the buyers should be paying the buyer's broker's commission, right? Whether it be 3%, 2%, 5%, 10%, whatever the case may be, based on the sales price, right? A flat fee, whichever. Here's a flip side in regards to that, and I think a lot of people are not really seeing this part of the whole entire situation. For buyers, essentially the majority of buyers are saved up a lot of money for closing costs. They're saving up a lot of money for the down payment on homes, especially with high interest rates. And at the very end, if now they have to pay an additional fee on top of that, it will probably make home buying a little bit more difficult, number one. And number two, it doesn't mean that the commission structure is going to change on the seller side. If you hire a brokerage and they say, hey, look, my deal is 6%, okay, fine. If a buyer goes directly to that seller's agent who's representing that homeowner, they will still get their 6%. They might break it down just a little bit because it's a direct buyer, so you don't have to pay me the full commission. So they might go down to 5% or 4%. Needless to say, is what I'm trying to say, is that the seller's agent is going to make more money on the commission. Buyers are going to be completely confused because they have no representation. What happens when you have no representation as on the buyer side? Well, they get lost in a sense that they think that the seller's agent is looking for their best interest, but in reality, they're not. Because by law, the seller's agent's loyalty is towards the seller, right? The buyer's agent's loyalty is towards the buyer. And I don't think a lot of people understand this, right? So people think, well, I shouldn't have to pay the buyer's broker's commission. And I can understand that. I can really understand that. Be like, well, I shouldn't have to pay for the buyer's broker involved in this deal. But technically, you're paying the 6 or 5% or whatever to this other brokerage, and they're just willing to just split it in half to say, hey, look, another agent came around with a buyer, and we're just going to split it. What does it matter how we split it and slice it and dice it? You still agreed to the 6%. It doesn't mean that your sales price is going to be inflated, because let me tell you something. Sales prices are dictated by the market. It really is. If you are saying that you're trying to sell your home at $1 million, but in reality it's really worth $700,000, you know what? You could say, hey, look, I'm putting $1 million because if I'm paying 6% on commission, right? If I'm paying 6%, I want to make sure I want to sell it at $1 million because I can't go any lower than that. Well, just because that's the case doesn't mean it's going to get sold at $1 million, right? The market will dictate what it will be sold at. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that homes also get appraised, right? So you could ask for an outrageous price, but if a bank goes to your home and they do the whole appraisal and everything, and they say, hey, you know what? This home is not worth $1 million. At most, it's probably worth $7.25. Guess what? The buyer will have to foot the other amount, and the majority of the time, they're probably not going to foot that amount. So you're shooting yourself in the foot. This is a free market where the sellers and the buyers are the one dictating price. You do not have a gun to your head as a seller. You do not have a gun to your head as a buyer. You can say, yes, I want to take it. No, I don't want to take it. As a buyer, you can say, yes, yeah, I want to take it. No, I don't want to take it. Okay? It is up to you what you want to do. But if we start with this whole thing and now buyers have to pay out of their own pocket, I honestly do believe more lawsuits will happen because there's a lack of representation on the buyer side, right? A buyer is not going to be able to, not a lot of buyers are going to be footing $10,000, $15,000 bills at the closing table. It's just not going to happen for the representation. Not to say that it can't happen at all. I'm sure there will be some that'll be willing to be like, you know what, this is a good agent. I think they're really worth it, and I'm going to pay it if they have the money, of course. But I feel like the majority of America who has been saving a lot doesn't want to have this extra expense, and especially they don't want to be tricked or fooled because now they're listening to everything on the seller's side because they have no representation. So I think it's a slippery slope. I think it's very important for every single buyer to have representation on their side because it's going to help them at the very end when you do a transaction and help you through the entire course of the entire deal as well too. It could get tricky, it could get messy, and technically by law, as a seller's agent, you have to represent to the seller's best interest. It's never, ever, ever the other way around by law. So make sure you always get a buyer's agent on your side. And honestly, if the main seller's agent is willing to split the commission with the other broker to bring that buyer in and to incentivize that buyer to want to buy that place, hey, at the end of the day, like I said, it's up to the buyer whether they want it or not. But you know what? Most importantly, it's their decision on what they want to do. So I think it's very important that we still have two people involved in a transaction so that they get best representation on both sides of the deal. Okay? So that's what I think is going to happen. That's my opinion on the seller side. That's my opinion on the buyer side. When it comes to buyer's agents, here's what I have to tell you guys. I honestly don't think you have to worry about this, right? I believe that this case will keep on going over and over and over as far as possible. I think I just read something that the case is going to be, I think it's in 2024. I read something here, yeah. With a trial date expected sometime in 2024, right? So the class action suit that could append the way agents are paid commission continues to move forward with a trial date expected sometime in 2024, right? So, you know, again, I don't think this is going to affect you in any sort of way, but this is what I will tell you, okay? When you're talking to a buyer, you should not just tell them like, hey, you know what, it's free for you, okay? Because it might bite you in the end, right? What you kind of like want to explain to them, right, is your role and how you could help them get to their goals and their needs, okay? And be very transparent on how commissions work, all right? You tell them, hey, look, commission and how it is the seller's agent will pay a percentage of whatever the percentage is on that particular home or apartment or whatever is willing to get paid for my commission, right? It's to your advantage, and at the same time, I can help service you into finding you the home that you need and protect you as your buyer's agent. You know what I mean? Now, there's some brokerages that will say, hey, look, if the seller's broker does not pay our commission, that the buyer will have to pay out of their own pocket for the services. Now, again, that is up to you whether if you want to do that or not. I wouldn't really drown on this. I think what you guys should be is 100,000% transparent with your buyer. Okay? Be completely transparent with your buyer and let them know how it works, what you do, and how you can move forward. And let me tell you something. I've learned that through transparency, you save yourself a lot of time. Because a lot of time agents like to go around the bush and make it seem like they're the seller's agent sometimes when they're getting a Zillow lead or whatever lead. They're pretending. Don't pretend. Tell them who you are. Are you familiar with the Zillow Premier agent? Are you familiar with Street Easy experts? Are you familiar with realtor type leads or professionals experts or whatever they call it on their site? You know what I'm saying? Do you understand how this works? Now, yes, well, I'm a part of this network that I pay for to make sure that I can service people like yourself because I'm a professional in this area. I can help you get to the goals of what you need. You know, these are things you need to tell your buyer as a buyer's agent. If there's any disclosures in your state, such as like in the state of New York, you have to disclose, right? What is your role in the transaction, right? Are you a seller's agent or are you a buyer's agent? You even have to tell them like whether if you are if you're a landlord, are you representing the landlord or you're just representing the tenant. That's how far New York even takes it. But in a sense of a sale, you let them know, I am a buyer's agent. I represent you. I have nothing to do with the seller. What I do, though, is talk to the seller's agent, and you don't have to talk to 5 or 10 different seller's agents to try to make appointments or whatnot. You can just deal with me, and I'll work everything out on this end. Make sense? So there's ways to say things, and there's ways to actually make it work to your advantage where the client will feel comfortable with you when you have disclosed everything. And I'm telling you, when you start doing this, you're going to start seeing clients and buyers, whether they want to work with you or they don't want to work with you. Because, of course, there are some that want to work directly with the seller, and that's totally okay, too. Let those people go. Do not sit down and try to tell them all the great things that you can do. If their minds are completely made up that they want to work directly with the seller, do not waste your time. If they're willing to have the seller's broker and they want no representation and have the seller's broker get all that commission on their own, hey, all the power to them. If they think they're saving money by doing that, go ahead. And it's funny because most of the times they don't save money. There has been NAR statistics actually that mentions things like when you hire a real estate professional, a good one on the buyer's side, they actually save you a ton of money, right? I feel like all this antitrust stuff that is happening right now is for the iBuyer and all these types of different types of communication tools because they themselves don't want to be paying buyer commissions as well because they want to deal directly with the buyer themselves. If you go on their app and you go on the phone and you see, oh, you can buy this home now, if you do everything through us, it's going to be a $3,000 discount. Oh, what a spectacular deal, on open home or something like that. Like, how is that a deal? When you hire an agent, I could probably break that down. I could probably bring that down an additional $30,000 to save you money. You know what I mean? I'm telling you, hiring and getting on your side a good buyer's agent will save you a ton of money. Okay? So, going back to this antitrust stuff, I wouldn't even worry about it. Focus on your business. Be completely transparent. Be professional with what you do. And I can guarantee you that your business will flourish as a real estate agent, either on the buyer side or on the seller side. And honestly, if you're a seller's agent and you see this stuff that's going on right now, I would be talking to your sellers and be like, hey, you probably have heard this type of stuff because they might mention it to you at the listing pitch, but you should tell them, hey, look, there's no inflating prices going on here. You're picking the price and here's the market price, okay? You could either you could hire my brokerage at whatever the percentage is, and my brokerage is willing to give half of that money to another agent who's willing to bring a buyer in. Do you have an issue with that? I would have a disclosure probably attached to those contracts, right? And broker owners, I would probably really think about doing this because I would put a disclosure, put it on those contracts. It kind of like says, hey, look, please note, you are paying X amount of dollars in commission to my brokerage, and if another broker is willing to come in with a buyer, we want to give half of that commission over to the other side. This has nothing to do with inflating prices. Please note, this is a fair market, and I would have the seller sign that. Have them sign that now when you're doing these listing presentations because this will protect you down the line. Aside from all the other disclosures, which we will not get into. But I think this is such an important one because a lot of people are talking about this. So, with that being said, that is it. I'm sorry. I have been talking for over 25 minutes, I think. And I don't want to take too much of your time, but I think we kind of get a gist of what's happening on all sides, from the seller side, the buyer side, from the seller's agent, and from the buyer's agent. So, again, don't worry about anything, and I'll catch you on the next video. Take care, everyone.